Hello, 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 and welcome everybody to our fourth session, our fourth show of Native Paranormal Crossroads with the Paranormal Rangers, sometimes called the Navajo Rangers. That's Michele, Stan, and John. So tonight we want to get on to talking about crystals, but first of all, we have an announcement related to what the Paranormal Rangers tour that's going to be happening in the UK. We'd originally said April, but we've now moved the date to June, and the Paranormal Rangers will be here from the 8th of June until the 11th of June inclusive. So that will be 4 days where there'll be 2 days of training in the hotel and 2 days out in the field. So, John, would you like to say a little bit more about what your training could encompass
Yeah.
when you come over to York in June?
Yes. The training, just so everybody knows, we have been training. This will be year 5 with training MUFON investigators. That's the Mutual UFO Network in Arizona. And we teach a class involving evidence collection. So, what we're going to do there is we're going to provide a training course on how to use certain types of equipment, how to investigate a case, and how to be safe doing it, which is our primary concern is always safety, safety, safety. And it'll give you a working knowledge. Um, Anybody coming in, whether they're amateur status or whether they're a seasoned police professional, will gain knowledge in this course. You have anything to add to that, Stan?
Well, over the years that we've conducted the training in conjunction with MUFON, it's always been a very positive atmosphere in which we've
Sounds
conducted this
awesome. Michele, do you
training.
want to add anything to that? Your part.
Well, Stan's finishing up. It looks like we had a little bit of a communication lag there, but Stan is giving his input as to the investigations and what has happened in his career.
So, John and I, like John mentioned earlier, we have assisted the Mutual UFO Network out of Phoenix with conducting their field investigators boot camp. And so during those times, it's been a very positive environment and atmosphere, and one of learning, one of sharing. And so with this new venture in York, we're all looking forward to this particular event and looking to meet some new people. And also each of these different training sessions John and I have done, we learn just as much as the participants do in meeting with people and discussing their experiences. And so it's one of a very positive atmosphere, one that you'll, I think, leave there from with a really good feeling and taking home some new techniques and ways of conducting what would be termed paranormal or supernatural investigation. How about you, Michele? You
Well, one of the things that I think that the participants will also discover about the Paranormal Rangers is that we have a spiritual side and a connection to our culture and traditional ways of looking at investigations from that aspect of understanding that we have interacted with these entities, beings, whatever, supernatural, whatever you would like to call it. and that there's no fear here, that part of the investigation toolkit set is just teaching the knowledge of how to not fear, but to understand that we have other realms that we deal with.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that you three, like Andrew, and anyone who sort of follows Andrew's teachings, go into these sort of things with what we call a sacred neutral viewpoint, without any sort of judgment, not letting it put you into fear or any sort of polarization at all. Because I think you would agree that it's actually very important you go in with that sort of attitude when you're dealing with the unseen world.
Back in our experiences, I don't know if I can speak for the other two rangers, but when I was up in the Uinta Basin, we went in with an intent, and whatever your intent, it will show up and manifest in that way. So if you go in ready with whatever your belief system or your intent, it will be the experience that you bring into it, not necessarily what it wants you to understand. And there is that commonality between this world and that neutral sacred space, as you guys talk about. And I love that, what you just said, because it impacts how you experience things in life. You can experience things in life with fear, or you can experience them with wonder and understanding.
Yeah, would you say part of your intent of going in is to discover and learn more about the unseen world, to learn more about the other dimensions, and to make some of the unknown known?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are messages, I'm sure, and there's reasons. So that we have these visitations, or they're manifesting to it, because we're open to the experience. And the more open you are, the more you're willing to learn about the experience.
Yeah, beautiful. So there are so many people over here in the UK interested in the paranormal. I know you guys have already been invited on to another show, and you'll be coming on Dale and I's Talking Stick show, all of you soon. We really want the UK, and especially York, to meet you. So this looks like it's going to be quite a sellout. So it's the 8th to the 11th of June inclusive. Again, you'll have 2 days in the hotel training, 2 days out in the field. We're joining Deathly Dark Tours in York, where one evening we'll be going around the old buildings and old places, using the equipment that you're going to be given on the tour as part of the package. I think there's a body cam and night vision goggles and so on. So you'll be able to practice using those when we're out on the streets of York. And I believe the next night we're going into a very old building. So I'm really looking forward to that. So before we move on, I'll just say if anybody's interested in that, there's lots of stuff up on all our Facebook pages, including the Paranormal have their Facebook page too. And you have a website, the paranormalrangers.com. All the information will be there for you, or you can always email me, Laura2feathers with the number 2 at gmail.com. Okay, that's great, guys. So tonight, crystals. Particularly Navajo crystals, I take it.
Well, what we did is we just included it as crystals. We are going to talk not only about different types of materials that are used in protection, but also the sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and other things that are used in conjunction with practices to protect yourself. And I like to joke around and say, when we talk about those things, we will teach you how not to burn your house down. So, and believe me, it has happened.
I can imagine.
So, and then we'll give you some ideas as to other methods of protection that nobody really thinks about or talks about, because, we like to copy things. We see something, it's kind of like monkey see, monkey do. And I'm guilty of this too. So we see something and we say, hey, that looks pretty cool. And we copy it. But what we've noticed is people that are copying the method uh, don't know the meaning behind it. And that's what we want to talk about today.
Beautiful. Yes. Lovely. So what do you want to kick off with? Can we kick off with crystals before we go into the protection slide? Because
Sure.
I'm going to ask you about the turquoise because
Oh,
I
okay.
think I've seen that you all wear
There you
turquoise
go.
and silver. Yes. So is silver and turquoise, is that particularly Navajo then, Stan?
Well, I think that for the Navajo culture and those of the Southwest of the United States, North America, um, these were things that they found available within their environment, within where they lived. Uh, a lot of Navajo turquoise comes from the state of Nevada, which is well known for its turquoise. And so, uh, what people don't understand is that yes, certain minerals and crystals have certain properties, just like quartz. Previously on a previous podcast, we talked about how. Hang on a second. How a quartz crystal. This is a simple quartz crystal. How
Right.
this quartz crystal can retain memory. We know that quartz crystal is used in certain types of watches, and it has been used in a lot of different modern technology because of its properties. Just the same as you have, gold and copper, different minerals that have certain innate properties, chemical properties to it. Um, but going back to the culture part of it, native cultures depended on these things to be able to utilize their properties, whether that was for healing purposes, for that of protection from negative energies, and or clearing spaces where maybe our dwelling or where we live. Uh, so there's a wide range of different minerals and crystals and things that are found within our own environment. The same as there in the UK, there are places where you have certain minerals that are available that people begin discovering certain properties to that. A simple thing is salt. I utilize salt uh, as a means of creating a barrier around my home against negative energies and to expel those negative energies. So um, I think in what we're getting here and what John will really elaborate on later is that we need to look inward to our own cultures. Uh, even within the United States, you look at the 500 plus native tribes here in the United States. And each one of those tribes have their own unique cultural differences, and even going so much as different types of crystals and things that they've used for protection and for things like that. So um, anyway, we're here to begin open a discussion about those kind of things, and I think we'll all take away something new from this particular event. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, bearing in mind the Navajo's deep connection to the land, how did your ancestors feel about minerals being mined when and crystals being mined and rocks being mined, did they actually mine them themselves, or would they take sort of the turquoise or the quartz that was lying on the surface?
John, can you jump into that?
Yeah, the Navajo themselves, you have to understand that they have traveled. They've gone all the way to the West Coast. They've gone north. Um, they're basically everywhere. Um,
Mhm.
I was in San Francisco and down at one of the beaches, and I saw somebody had scribed into one of the wooden posts there uh, their name, and then it says Navajo, Kienta, Arizona. And I was going, wow, Navajos came all the way over here, but they have traveled. They've picked up other clans, people from different areas. Uh, they differentiate with Anasazi, Fremont. They have pueblos. You have cliff dwellers. You have, some of the clans are mixed with Mexican ancestry. Some of them are actually Mojave ancestry. And the cliff dwellers were allowed in to create their own clan. And so today we have clans like Kia'ani,
Mhm.
that they say Towering House clan. We like to say Skyscraper clan. But you have this mixture, this gathering together under one roof, so to speak. And turquoise was originally mined all over. It's all over Arizona. It's in Nevada, all over the world, really. And the Navajo look at turquoise as protection. It's a
Mhm.
stone that offers protection. The silver came from coins. Back in those days, all of your coins were made out of silver. And so they would take this in order to make jewelry, they'd take coins and melt them, reforge them into bracelets, into different items to wear. And the women would actually be adorned with collars with actual coins on them from the back in the day. So you would see Mercury head dimes and just whatever kind of coins. And traditionally, what they would do is if they needed money at the trading post, sometimes they just reach up, pop off a coin, and hand it to the person. So that's when things were, it was actual five and dime store. We don't see that anymore. Now the Navajo also use coral
Mm.
as a stone, red coral. And the purpose of the coral is to remind us that we went to see White Shell Woman on the West Coast, one of the deities, and then traveled back. On the way back, they picked up two Mojaves that were looking for a place to call home. So you have turquoise, you have coral,
Mhm.
and and turquoise is a whole subject all to itself. You could spend days and days looking into the different types of turquoise and how much they cost and what the different attributes are. Um, but we just tend to look at it as turquoise, coral, and silver. Um, Now, with your any type of stuff, I had recently found this bracelet for my Apple Watch, and one of the things that I did is I brought it home, and instead of just putting it on and wearing it, uh, I took it and used cedar smoke and with a certain amount of intent.
Mhm.
Um, Anything that you get, even if you get a quartz crystal, it'll bear the impression of whoever handled it or whoever possessed it before. And if that person has died, or maybe they were not nice people, it could still have those intentions within that object. So what we do is it's kind of like um, hitting delete, on your computer. You get rid of that old memory, and with intent, you put your new stamp on it, so to speak, so that it's new. It's not going to create problems for you. We see the same thing happening with pieces of pottery that people collect. They take it into their homes, and then they find out they've got poltergeist activity. They've got all kinds of weird stuff going on. And we tell them it's because you brought these objects into your home. And now you need to cleanse the house and get rid of these things and put them back where they came from. So almost anything can keep that residual memory. And the important thing there is the intent that you have when you smoke something. And we'll discuss intent in a little more detail after a while.
Okay, thank
One
you.
of the other things I want to add in here, in what John said, is that today it's very popular to uh, visit secondhand stores and flea markets and what's known as Goodwill stores of secondhand items. And a lot of times you can find some really beautiful and really unique things that were owned previously. But just like what John said, these items too can still retain a certain energy that's infused within that particular item or object. And even to the point of having attachments with a person's, the previous owner's spirit, or even I know you may have seen some of these television shows that uh, involve paranormal investigations and haunting investigation and things of that nature, that they'll be talking about or referring to an object that may even have energy that might be referred to as something demonic or something spiritual in nature, that may be of a really strong negative energy. And people unknowingly find a beautiful object at the flea market or whatever, and really like that object and bring it home without the understanding or idea that there may be attachments or energy to that. And there are different ways of clearing that energy. I mentioned the use of salt earlier, and salt is another way of being able to clear that negative energy from these objects. Again, one of the key things that John brought up was the intention or intent that you have. And we'll talk a little bit more about clearing, your home and your space of different energies and stuff. But it's critical in doing those and conducting those practices that you have the intent up here and within your heart, within your aura, a very positive energy going forward.
So I guess that is particularly important, that clearing ritual, because a lot of the stones and the crystals are made into jewelry. So it could be something that you're wearing around your neck or you have on you for a long time, because you do see a lot of the coral and the shells and the turquoise together, don't you? And the silver within the Navajo. Does the red coral represent divine feminine and the turquoise divine masculine, or is that not something in the Navajo culture?
Well, you're going into a spiritual, existential, I guess, element to what the world's trying to create with crystals. And like we're getting back to what was not mentioned about turquoise is from early on we give the infants little turquoise beads when they're born, and because of the health and protection that are tied to it. Also, in the initiation of puberty and such, they go through these ceremonial rituals where there's tons of turquoise being worn because of the health and protection that person's transitioning into during these ceremonies. And it's trying to get into the divine feminine or the divine masculine is really not in the culture.
Mm-hmm.
As to what modern day is teaching, it's more the aspect of how does it tie into an individual's life and how is it revered throughout the life of the Native American or the person wearing the jewelry, and to the intent of what the true nature of turquoise is to the Native Americans. We do have a lot of turquoise being mined, and the famous one is Kingman turquoise, and that's a very famous stone because it is a very rare. It can only now be sold to the Navajos, no longer to the market. And so when Navajos make it with Kingman turquoise, there is a spiritual significance that holds on to the culture and the people making the jewelry. And there are processes for the commercialization of turquoise. But every stone that's used in Native American jewelry, it resides on the Native American lands. And one of them is rose crystal. I have rose crystal with me, as people know who are in the mining industry, that if you have a vein of rose crystals, there's usually gold involved. And, Native Americans use gold to, as an artisan to creating, a piece of jewelry. So, finding the rarest pieces of turquoise on the Navajo reservation, there's a cost to that too as well. The cost to buying those pieces of jewelry because they're so revered in our culture.
Yeah, and I think sadly what your crystals represent has been slightly perverted with the new age and the new sort of spiritual modes out there. We're not, at least from you, we're getting the real Navajo.
Well, I think
Probably used for. Yeah.
I think one of the things that was brought up, the fact that you're involving mining and mining in a way, depending on the scale and what's involved, can be exploitive of those particular items. That what we're speaking about here, the use of turquoise, even the smallest piece of turquoise can be considered very sacred and very important to individual Navajos. So it's not always about the volume of those items and those particular objects. Even the smallest item can have great sacred significance to it. So, but I think anywhere you go, you'll have those individuals and entities that try to exploit, these things. And just what we're coming here today and speaking on, and we will touch upon this idea of exploitation of what is considered sacred by individuals or groups of people.
So I was given this, guys. Is that obsidian?
Mm-hmm.
So
Obsidian.
I noted in one of the paranormal videos I watched that I think both John and Stan, and possibly you do too, Michele, I think one of you had this, something like this in your car when you were traveling for protection.
I carry an obsidian arrowhead on me all the time.
Okay.
When I'm Go ahead, John.
And I have one in my vehicle at all times. the obsidian is used again for protection, and it's for Navajos. Obsidian is a very strong uh, uh, item in your repertoire of things that you have. Um, there are churches that are white, um, and I think Stan has a couple of examples of white and dark arrowheads or spear points that are used in ceremonial practice. Um, so there's lots of but the obsidian itself is basically volcanic glass.
This is a white arrowhead.
Wow.
So these things are, not only are they used for hunting, they're used for war
This is
and for
obsidian,
protection.
clear. Obsidian.
Beautiful.
And obsidian can actually be tracked to different locations from where they were mined. And a lot of these, it's really interesting because we've actually found samples of obsidian used by cliff dwellers, by Anasazi, and by Navajos and basket makers that were found to be mined in Mexico. So we know that there were trade routes. To think that there's this fence line separating South America from Central America is not really true. They had trade routes. We have in some of the ruins up here, we have parrot feathers. We don't have parrots here in the Southwest. But 700, 900 years ago, they had trade routes and they were getting parrot feathers. So, and even Blind Frog Ranch, they are looking for treasure that was buried there and hidden by the Aztecs.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Aztecs were way up around, the border up there, and they traveled all over the place. They're finding some similarities in ruins all the way out to Florida, where there's ball courts and everything else going on, which is an Aztec thing. So historically, we know that there was a lot of different trade routes. So Stan's got a whole big collection.
Yes, he's got a huge collection there.
Yeah.
And you should put your whole collection up on camera.
I don't know if
Then they'd all fall off.
There you go. There you go. That's a true paranormal ranger right there.
Nicely presented in a case too.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Well, again, these are treated as sacred objects. Just like what John mentioned, some of these particular arrowheads are obsidian, but there's other types of stone that these are made from, and so they have the mineral property to it, just like a crystal does. But the shape of the arrowhead goes back and was used for tens of thousands of years by indigenous peoples. And I think in the use of that, and just like what I do today, carrying one on my person all the time, there is an intent that is infused within that object, of one of protection, one of reverence for all of my ancestors, whether it's Navajo or Puebloan, or even on my mother's side of the family, the Cherokee, and the use of arrowheads. And so that in itself has a certain sacredness to our peoples, and our ancestors that have gone on, and our guardians that are there protecting us. They recognize those objects, and they recognize an arrowhead. They recognize the crystals that were utilized, and they themselves, those energies, can impose powers and things within those objects too. So yeah, they're very sacred. So I
Yeah,
try to take care of them.
when the Navajo were first contacted back in the 1500s by the Spanish, Coronado,
Mhm.
um, they called the Navajo the razor people in Spanish. The reason they called them the razor people is that they had obsidian arrowheads and obsidian knives. And these things were so sharp that they could slice you and you'd not even feel it.
Hmm.
They
Mhm.
also had a very unique way of adding poison to the shafts and to the tips. And this was most of the time it was dried rattlesnake venom that these things were put on the tips.
some
So
of the some of the plains would use like buffalo dung and dung from animals on those arrowheads, so that when they penetrated their enemy, they would cause illness and death.
so you had a lot of this going on, and understand that even today, obsidian is so sharp. There was a company, I think they're still operating, called Aztec out of Tucson, Arizona, and they make uh, blades, scalpel blades for microscopic surgery, and they use obsidian to make these blades. They found out obsidian is much, much sharper than a steel scalpel. And when you're doing brain surgery, you want the sharpest thing you can get, um, to be as precise as you can. So that's how
This
sharp.
particular crystal is made of obsidian. It's a block of
An
obsidian.
obelisk. I love
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
beautiful.
It's really interesting about talking about crystals and its nature and its representation to culture, our culture, especially in Navajos. It's really interesting throughout the travels that I've done through the world. One of the things is we're talking about manufacturing and commerce, and back in the times of the Anasazi or whatever community group, whether it's native or indigenous, or we were doing trade beats. Trade beats were a way of exchanging goods and services for food, for different things. And throughout my travels, I've got trade beats here. I hope you can see a little bit of it, but these were given to me from other indigenous cultures, whether it's Asiatic or, from South America. But that was a form of trade. And then we can talk about the form of trades that occurred with the Navajo nations. And even to this day, we have a modern manufacturing where we make jewelry and we're trading, not necessarily beads, because that was a form of monetary money, but we use cash right now. And so it's really interesting how these stones get throughout the world and its representations. I love your jacala. That's called a jacala. And we all have that jewelry within our own our own regalia. We call that regalia. Part of it is a part of our traditional jewelry. That is a beautiful piece. Do you have the earrings to that?
This one, this one was my father's.
Yeah,
So
or
is
they're
that
handed down. Things are handed down. Oh, I
sure? Is that ceremony what you would wear for ceremony?
part of our cost. I don't like to say the word costuming. That offends one of the Rangers here's ears. Sorry, Jonathan. It's part of our regalia. It's part of the practice of wearing traditional clothing, and this is traditional representations of the jewelry that we hold sacred. And he's got coral that is sought
That's
after, and
wow.
those are probably handed down because today you can't get coral pieces. I mean, you can, but they're extremely expensive, and it's
Yeah.
part of our ceremonial wear.
Yeah, what Michelle's referring to is that a lot of people will refer to Indian regalia or native regalia as costumes. Costume is something that the prop department gives you or you wear on Halloween to be something that you are not.
Yes.
You're pretending to be something.
So we refer to it as regalia because every tribe back in the day, you could look at their regalia and tell exactly what tribe they were from the beading designs to the colors that they used. Um, my background on one of my tribes is Cheyenne, so we used a lot of white background with red and blue, and red, white, and blue. It's kind of there's a whole story behind that, but the short story is that when the 7th Cavalry was defeated at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, or the what we call the Battle of Greasy Grass, is that the 7th Cavalry detachment was wiped out, and Custer at the time he was a lieutenant colonel, not a general, and after they were defeated, they lost their colors. They lost the American flag and they lost their unit colors. Today, the 7th Cavalry is still considered a disgraced unit because they have never recovered their colors. And I'd like to think that it's in somebody's house, stuffed away in a coffee can and sealed up. And today, a lot of different Indian tribes wear a combination of red, white, and blue in their regalia because it's our message that you're never going to get your colors back. We claim those. We are wearing those colors now. And so it's a reminder. Um,
And there's a sacredness to that.
so colors are important. You could look at somebody's moccasins and tell what tribe they were from, and even down to what family they came from, depending on the design, because designs are family oriented. This is why it's not good practice if you're a hobbyist in doing the powwows. You don't copy somebody's regalia because those things are sacred within that family. And so you can take a design or you can ask permission from the individual, but you don't just take their design and copy it and wear it for your own because you don't know what the history is behind that.
And also, I think you don't touch any of this if it's not yours, do you? You don't reach out and touch somebody's jewelry.
Yeah, always ask permission.
Yeah.
This is what Jonathan. I'm going to displace 150-year-old moccasins that were handed down through my ancestors. This is Plains Indian. This is what he's talking about. This is our insignia. This is kind of like our crest, as what people would understand. But basically, this is a representation of where I came from.
What would denote a Navajo moccasin then, Michele?
Say that again.
Anything particular about a Navajo moccasin? Any particular color or design?
It is usually brain tan. It's a lot different from what I just showed you. It's brain tanned. It's usually elk or buffalo or but the lighter skins. I mean, these guys could probably explain it better than I. But there's a wrap that goes around the leg that's of white elk, and very, very expensive.
John can probably elaborate a little bit on it.
Yeah, elaborate on that.
The traditional Navajo moccasin is a rust color moccasin. It's usually made out of deer hide. The wrap that starts at the ankle and goes up to just below the knee will either be deer skin or elk skin. And it's usually a light color.
And these are women's moccasins, correct?
Yeah,
Right.
those are the
Those are
women's
the women's.
moccasins.
Yeah.
The men will have a rust-colored moccasin, either a low one that just comes up to the ankle, or for the chiefs or the people in greater esteem, they will have a full moccasin that goes up to just below the knee. That'll have conchos down the side, silver buttons.
And it's very rare that they will have beadwork on those moccasins, generally not.
Yeah.
In early depictions, photographs of Navajos, the men, a lot of times you'll see them, and really there's nothing more than like a loincloth, and then the type of moccasins that John's referring to. And if you pay attention to, like from their knee down, you can see a lot of the scarring and injury that's caused by moving through brush that have thorns and things of that nature. There are other tribes in this area that utilized wraps for that part of their leg, simply for protection and stuff. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Yes.
each of us come from different tribes, so we all have different regalia. We have different representations that came down through our family. It's really an interesting, a display of who John is or who Stan is and who I am. We've got different regalia, between us, but generally the moccasins were made for protection against the elements, is according to what Stan was saying. But for ceremonial purposes, they were used to represent the hunt. Or, hey, how you
Hey
doing?
guys, hi there. Hello.
Good to have you on.
Good to see you all. Hello.
So its representations are according to the intent. So what we've been talking about is intent versus the sacredness of ceremonial wear, or everyday wear. I mean, they were the moccasins for everyday wear. They weren't as fancy as what we're showing you, but these I've got belts, beadwork 150 years old. So these things are very important, and the sacredness of them are very important to us, handed down by our family members. I would have loved to kept my great aunt's buckskin, regalia. It was beautiful, but it went into the grave with her. So that is a whole different thing to talk about. But it's just a really interesting cultures that we come from. And getting back,
Go on, Michele.
I said, getting back to the crystals, and its representation, crystals, are being used now as a form of protection or a form of understanding the nature of the world we're living in today. And so taking some of these traditions and cultures into the modern world has been very interesting to watch the lines coming together. I think people today are trying to find an understanding to their own cultures and trying to understand who they are, and through indigenous knowledge. So I think that's wonderful. I think it's how it's being used. We need to be very careful of that, how it's being represented.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's much needed. The wisdom of,
Yes.
the indigenous and how to live in natural co-creation with the earth is something that's been missing for a long time.
Right.
And yes, another topic for another show.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I was just going to ask a little aside. Are Navajo some of the oldest tribes? The Navajo tribe, are they one of the oldest tribes, or one of the biggest, or both?
We are one of the biggest.
Right.
The other tribes, when in 1492, when the Pilgrims came, that we gave Homeland
Yes.
Security the day off that day, and look what happened. Look who
Yeah.
came in over the border. But we all those tribes, there were probably over 5,000 Indian tribes back then that were distinct and separate. You know, today there's not many left. You know, what was it, 400 or 500?
550 recognized federal tribes.
574 is what the government recognizes today. So there was a systematic genocide that took place.
Can I add something, John, real quick?
Yeah.
Something just real quick to consider is that in the 1800s, that the U.S. government paid the state of California over $1 million. And that $1 million was to go to pay individuals $5 each for Native American scalps and or Native American heads. So if you just do the math there, that's over 200,000 indigenous peoples that were killed and paid for by the U.S. government. So something to think about.
Extermination Act.
Yeah. So,
and then they gave you treaties for your own land.
Right.
Well, they gave us the worst land that they could think of to corral us into a reservation, little realizing that there were minerals and oil and other things under the land that would in later years become increasingly valuable. And you know, the government would love Indian tribes to go away. We're not going to go away. We maintain our identities. We still teach our languages. We teach our history, the history that we have amongst ourselves. And so I'm gonna change subjects just a little bit here. Because
We're still here, baby.
I'll have to get on my soapbox and
another show.
all you'll see is my neck. But we're going to talk a little bit about this kind of stuff here.
Okay, the clearing and the cleansing.
Now this is abalone, and we use that to. It's usually filled with earth, and you put your cedar. This is sage here, used for cleansing and protection. We have cedar, which is right here, and we have what's called sweetgrass, which is usually braided, and it smells really good. I got it sitting right next to me. I'm just inhaling all this. The shell represents water because it comes from the ocean. The earth represents our land. The smoke represents the air. And so you have all those things. We carry stuff like this, and this is called bitter medicine. There's a lot of different things that we use and carry for protective measures. And and Stan's got an eagle feather there. Just so everybody knows, you cannot, unless you're Native American and can prove ancestry, you cannot possess eagle feathers at all. It is in the United States, it is a federal violation or federal law. So, you know, and even Native Americans, we cannot trade or we can't sell them. We can't go out and collect them. I got my eagle fan, wing fan from the government, from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it took almost 5 years for them to ship me the eagle so that I could work on it. So there's a lot that goes into this. Eagle feathers are never to be handled or touched by anybody. These are sacred objects that are not to be handled lightly. What we do, and this is just for us, we light these things on fire and let them smoke a little while, and we use the smoke, and it's like a physical bathing in the smoke. Just as you would take a bath every day or you would take a shower, we try to smoke as often as we can. And what it does is it clears negative energy. Believe it or not, they're also finding out that it creates negative ions, which are actually good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also creates a smoke that has antimicrobial properties. So it does purify. And this is why you see a priest walking down the center of the deal, swinging an urn back and forth with smoke coming out of it. This is to purify the air in the church there. So there are reasons that it's used. Now, for us, there's one aspect of smudging or smoking yourself, and that's that you have to have an intent. If you just go through the motions and have the smoke coming up and you're going, oh yeah, that's good, it doesn't do anything. You have to have the prayer behind it and the intent in your mind and your heart that this is going to do whatever you need it to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that intent, like I said, you're just going through the motions. Going into a church does not make you a church member, just as going into a garage doesn't make me a car. It has the intent of what you want out of it. That's the most important thing of all. So I'll let Stan and Michele chime in.
This is the Navajo corn pollen.
Wow.
It's usually carried within a little pouch or bundle on that person. These are used for most notably in your when you're conducting your morning prayers. A Navajo person gets up before the sun rises and goes outside and will recite their morning prayers to the Creator and to the four directions. And Navajos ingest uh, a bit of corn pollen, they put it on their person, and they make an offering to the Creator with that to carry their prayers. And so, again, these items are very, very sacred to the Navajo people. And going back to the what's told within the creation story or emergence story of the holy people and the holy beings. And so all of these items that we've shown today, that we've discussed, they're, again, the intent and the sacredness, of those things. It's different to each individual. Um, and different cultures have their own ways. If you go back in history and look at those individual cultures, you'll find the things that they utilize for protection and for healing and for to help them in their prayers. And so yeah, it's very interesting, and these things are very important.
Can I ask a question about? So, do you use the sacred pipe? because that's something when I was with a lady who was, I think she was doing from the Sundance medicine path from Phoenix, and they were talking about the sacred pipe, and they're not even allowed to take photos of it. They're not allowed to take it out. It has to be completely sacred, only out in ceremony. Is that something the traditions you do as well?
Oh yeah, I'm from the Pawnee Skidee clan, and my uncle, who just passed away last year, had a family pipe, and it has to be handed down from him to his son. Unfortunately, his son passed away early before he did, and he acquired the medicine. We call this medicine. He acquired the medicine from a Lakota chief. And that's how sacred these are. And they have to be handed down through family or somebody of importance of their lives. And I asked about the pipe because I thought maybe it would be handed down to my firstborn. He's my oldest son. And they put it in the grave with my uncle because it has to be his family. And so a tradition, and that has been handed down through centuries, through family. And even although it was a Sioux chieftain that he had gotten this pipe from, when you don't practice the medicine in our culture, and you're not traditional, that pipe cannot go to that individual because of its sacredness. So that's how sacred these pipes are.
Beautiful. Wow.
So was that an eagle feather you had there, John? Was that the one?
That's part of his regalia.
Okay.
Well, yeah, this is a wing fan.
Okay.
And that's the backside. This is an immature golden eagle.
It's beautiful.
Wing.
Wow.
And so this is what I use when I dance at ceremonials and different powwows. So that's something that's held in very high esteem. I also have a pipe. In my family, the eldest son, I'm the pipe carrier for my family. I do smoke a regular pipe occasionally. The only thing I will not do is I will not sign any treaties. So
the thing to keep in mind is that these animals possess certain powers and sacredness as a living being, as a living animal. Going back again to what I mentioned with the emergence. And so you'll often see different indigenous peoples and different tribes that will have different fetishes and totems and things of these animals, and these objects will have related I would guess you would say a supernatural power that goes with these objects. That's how sacred these things are. Eagles were never killed by uh, Navajos to collect their feathers and that kind of thing. There were certain ceremonies and certain ways of obtaining those things, and again, the feathers today are very sacred and they retain those powers that animal once had. The same with things like bear claws. Bear claws are considered very sacred, very powerful. A lot of times, a person who is in the military that's going to war, a ceremony will be performed, and that person will possess, be given, let's say, a bear claw or something that has that bear claw within it, whether it's a necklace or something of that nature, for protection and for to impose that capability that animal had. So in this situation, a person that's going into war can do what they need to do and to be able to come home safely. Um, and then a
Is
lot of times they go through another ceremony after that, so that they don't retain that those powers and things that that animal had during that time of when that person went to war or combat or overseas.
So they
is the
use that when they need that particular sort of energy.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
is the bear
Generally, we refer to these animals as our brothers and sisters. We're interconnected into their environments as well. We respect who they are. The bear is one of courage and bravery. And so, because of our connection to that energy, we revere that animal. And so, to distinguish one, especially the male, who is like Stan was referring to, having gone to war or having done some battle, the Smithsonian has taken photos of my great great grandfather who was a chief, and generally the leaderships were the ones, the people in leadership positions were the ones that wore a full-on bear claw necklace, and those were, like he said, given through a ceremonial, or was a leader of that tribe that earned. You have to earn those regalia that we're speaking into. So it's a respect thing, and it is part of our sacred natures.
what is it like for bear claws? Like, is it illegal in some parts of America? Legal
Yes,
some
it is
parts?
today. It
Yeah.
is. It
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
think,
is. It is illegal to possess. You can't
illegal
even have
sex.
it.
Mhm.
For me, I had to show that I was Native American. I had to show bloodline. I had to put in an application to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service and get on their what they call a feather bank program.
Mhm.
The feather bank, what they do is eagles die due to hitting power lines, uh, whatever attacks from other eagles. Their carcasses are found occasionally, and they are taken by Game and Fish and sent to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And there is a
Repository.
warehouse, a repository where these are all these remains are kept.
Mhm.
And as Native Americans need them, they can apply to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service uh, for these feathers, whatever they need. The wait time on them, like I ordered an immature golden eagle, immature one, and it took 5 years for them to get me that eagle. So it takes time. At
Each
the
one
same,
of these remains and feathers are meticulously cataloged.
Mhm.
Uh, it's not just randomly done or anything. It's very detailed, very specific, really on the level of like a criminal investigation at that level for each one of those items. They're documented and archived, and it's very meticulous, very interesting how they do it.
So if
yeah,
people are out there telling you that they've acquired eagle feathers, it had to be handed down or, or on the
Yeah,
black market, but they're probably getting imitation.
yeah.
You've got
Mhm.
have you guys heard of the eagle owl before? So
yeah,
there's a something called the eagle owl in England and Europe, and it's
Oh, I
apparently
didn't know that.
if you look
no,
it up, it's bigger than a golden eagle. So it's a half eagle, half owl, and they're actually in Scotland. And you can actually have eagle owl feathers here. It's actually legal here. I'd highly recommend to look up an eagle owl. Yeah, incredible creature. It's like half
yeah.
eagle, half owl. It's incredible stuff.
That's interesting. Hook us up.
Yes, yes,
I'm
I
looking
will.
at
There's an actual center,
So,
bird of prey center, which
so
actually sell them.
I was going to say, in concluding our other topic, one of the things I wanted to mention is you don't just take somebody's methods and copy them.
Mhm.
We jokingly refer to it as being a pretendian. Um, and it's meant
to
as
make
no
it.
disrespect. It's just our humor.
Mhm.
But
Right.
what we encourage people to do, every one of us has a cultural background somewhere along the line. If you don't have a cultural background, you don't have ancestors. And if you don't have ancestors, you don't really exist. Um, so, what we encourage people to do, I was at Alien Con in Pasadena, California. Uh, and this question was posed to me, well, should I start um smudging? And how do I go about that? And what I told them was don't just copy, um, go into your historical background of your culture and find out what they did to protect themselves. Adopt that and take it as your own. It has more authority and more power that way than if you're just copying a different culture. And you'll find that there are a lot of similarities
Yeah.
in different cultures and how they approach this. It's just the methodology that is different. So, research into your culture. If you're French, if you're German, if you're English, Welsh, uh, Irish, Scottish, um, find out what they did and the methods they used and the things they used to protect themselves and adopt that and make it your own. So that's, if we're going to leave you with anything, we'd like to leave you with that. And like I said, we talked about intent. The most important thing in any of this is to have the intent when you're praying, when you pray to the Creator, when you pray to God, when you pray through Jesus Christ, when you pray through the Virgin Mary, depending on if you're Catholic, Protestant, or whatever. Um, you you say your prayer and it comes from in here and here, and that's what's important, more important than anything else.
Intent.
Yes, intent.
Intent.
Intent,
Very
intent.
important stuff. I know we didn't elaborate a lot on the crystals. Laura, that's your specialty. But we use crystals and Native American rock to represent our connection to them.
Yeah,
One of the most wonderful things is we're starting to use crystals beyond what we have on the reservation. I possess a lapis bracelet. It's beautiful. It's Navajo made,
Oh,
uh,
beautiful.
but also it has its protection and health benefits to the stone. And so we use a lot of the stones in our jewelry that represent
You use a lot of red
protection,
coral, the red
multicultural.
coral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we covered red coral and
Did you
turquoise.
cover it before? Yeah, yeah.
Obsidian.
The blood of the earth. Yeah.
yeah.
The
One last additional thing, um, that I want to, and we said this right up front. This is hookah coals. They're self-lighting, so you can take them out, put a match to them, and that little slab or sliver of it will burn like crazy.
I've
Um,
got some here.
yeah,
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 yeah.
we
now
Got the
all have,
frankincense as well. Yeah.
they get
yeah,
just
love it.
so everybody knows, they get extremely hot.
Mhm.
If
Careful.
you put them in a small cast iron pan, the bottom of that pan will heat up to the point where it can set things on fire. And believe me, I've tried to hold one of those pans in my hand and walk around in the house to smoke the house, and it got too hot to hold on the handle. So
Wow.
I had to go get an oven mitt and hold it that way. These things can be very dangerous. You'll find that if you're smudging, you can set off your smoke alarms, um, which is irritating at most. But if you set the thing down on something flammable, you could actually cause a house fire.
One other thing to consider with what John is saying is that with positive energy, there's also negative energy. You
Mhm.
can't have one without the other. And that's throughout the universe. So as you are going forward to do positive things for others and for your family or for yourself, there's also a negative energy that's opposing that, that
Mhm.
doesn't want that. So what John's bringing up about safety in this respect has to be part of it, because you're always going to have, there will always be a negative energy there somewhere to try to do you harm and try to do these things. You have to find the means and way of protecting you and keeping things safe, so that you can manifest these positive things. But always keep that in mind. Not to be afraid of these things, because you shouldn't be afraid of them. Just recognize that these things exist. It does.
Yeah,
So,
in Navajo culture, they teach that yes, there's positive energy, there's negative energy.
Mhm.
They've existed from the beginning of time. And it's up to you to have a balance in your life and to choose which way you're going to go. Very simple
with everything you do,
with everything you do, but to always understand that there is that balance of negative and positive energy. And the Navajo tries to maintain a balance.
Joe,
Yeah, they call it Hojo in Navajo, that balance, that way of life. So it does recognize, and you see TV shows and movies like Star Wars where they say, oh, we need to destroy the evil, and so there's nothing but good. Well, that's not really how it works. For every action, there's an equal and
Yeah.
opposite reaction. And so it's like watching a pendulum swing back and forth. If it swings one direction, it's going to swing the same amount in the other direction. And so you have to be very careful um, about that. So, what we're teaching today, what we're trying to get across to you is be safe, be aware that these things can combust, you know, ignition, fuel, oxygen, they're all there. And, from a real basic fire type thing. And, so don't set these things up. They're not like little candles that you can just set on the windowsill. Um, Even candles can burn your house down. That's why I recommend those little electric candles now, because I don't have to worry about falling asleep and leaving it on.
Right.
But you know, be careful in everything you do. Don't come back to us and say, "Well, you told us to do this, and my drapes caught on fire." You know,
Be responsible.
we don't need that kind of
be
publicity.
responsible.
Yeah. Be responsible.
I do want to make a comment where I thank all of those people that joined us today as our guests making comments. Thank you, Kimberly Ann, for your comment regarding the collection of things that I have for protection. And so we appreciate everyone being here and participating. Thank you.
Any last words, Michele?
Yeah, one of the tags I like to use, walk in beauty. This is our Navajo greeting, walk in beauty, let your life be balanced, and be responsible when you're doing your saging or whatever you do out there as for protection. Just be safe.
Thank you. Dale, any last words?
Just want to say you're all incredible, and every show I come onto, it's so inspiring, and I could just talk for hours with you guys. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
So thank you very much. It's an absolute honour sitting here and listening to all your wisdom. And don't forget, everybody, they will be in York in June for the Navajo Training seminar and tour and so on. And we'll be there with combined therapies too. And we'll be there from the 6th of June right through to the 14th. You'll find everything, all the information on all our Facebook posts. So, Jonathan, Michele, Stan, what's a good way for people to get hold of you? You've got you've got your Facebook page, and you've got the paranormal website, paranormalrangers.com.
Yeah, and you can also go to the Paranormal Rangers at outlook.com.
Fabulous.
Please join us. Come with us to York.
Yes, guys. Yeah, please do. And also, let's give these guys some support. If you can get onto their website, they have a membership going. If you can get onto their Facebook page, please do like and subscribe to these videos too, which will come out on, I think they come out on Galactic Historian. So we're all trying to support each other here to bring back these unbelievably wonderful Indigenous teachings. We don't want them lost. We want these teachings out there, and we want to bring the balance back that they teach to humanity, and the balance back for Earth Mother. So thank you, everybody who tuned in, and see you guys next week. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.